Greetings, you're watching Our Money, the program on anti-corruption investigations. My name is Bihus. Today, quite unexpectedly, we will talk about contract killings and how to stage them. The most famous, high-profile imitation has happened recently with Arkady Babchenko. I'm sure you've heard about it, everyone has. So, a day after Babchenko's resurrection after being killed, when emotions calmed down, many people came up with a question. Was it that necessary to orchestrate this kind of a spectacle? Then the Security Service of Ukraine and the Ministry of Defense said that a staged murder like that is a standard practice. It's used pretty often. That's true. They also said that staging a murder is the only way to collect all the evidence and get the hiring party. Well, that's not quite right. Oleksandr Kurbatov looked through staged murders of past years. Those were high-profile cases as well. You may have heard about them too, because the Prosecutor General reported about them, and even the Prime Minister did. But what happened to them later, when the Prime Minister stopped talking about them? A lawyer was shot in Odesa. This bullet-riddled car was shown to the entire country. May 2016, crime news, a bullet-riddled car, a covered body, and in a couple of days, news about a successful special operation with staged contract killing. The Pechersk court put the 4 people who organized the assassination of the lawyer Oleksandr Kurbatov under arrest for 2 months. 1.5 months before that, the lawyer Kurbatov contacted the police. He was being followed. The police followed the criminals for weeks, listened to their communication, and understood that a murder was being planned. They talked all the time, the middlemen asking the assassins if they're stupid and can't catch him. First, they got the hitmen, then they staged the shooting. After the staged murder, they recorded the middleman's call that the mission was accomplished. Overall, the police arrested 2 hitmen, 2 middlemen, and the hirer. Top officials were bragging about the operation's success. I'm very pleased by the cooperation with the Ministry of Defense and the National Police in this high-profile case. Thank God that the Ukrainian court decided to arrest them and leave them behind bars. That was the right thing to do. Summer of 2018. 2 years passed, 4 of the 5 arrested are out. First, they let off the hirer, and then the middleman, and then one of the hitmen. A hitman who had his car wiretapped and all. His phones were tapped, who often reported about the target, asking when to kill him. He's out of prison. Zatoka village, dust, tall grass. You can hardly tell that people are ready to kill for land here, literally. Even despite steep prices and bad service, Zatoka is one of the most popular places for a summer vacation in Ukraine. A year before the assassination attempt, Kurbatov rented all the 12 kilometers of beaches in Zatoka for 50 years. He received the right to the coastline of 3 local islands from the village council, allegedly 2 days before the end of its term. Also, he now had an exclusive right for beach commerce, be it restaurants or beach chairs. A waterfront is a project which can bring around $1.5 million annually. Kurbatov had a conflict with the new village council because of this project. The council members insist that the lease documents of their predecessors were forged. I'll say this again, I don't have a single original. You don't need it, I do. In turn, the lawyer started a campaign of exposing the shady land deals of others, as well as of arsons at tourist camps. I came to Vinnytsia with a blue folder and a big sheet of drawing paper with schemes showing who was linked to whom, what and when got burned, where the property went. The official investigation says the new secretary of Zatoka Village Council planned the murder. This morning we detained the hirer, who is, let's say, an official, the secretary of Zatoka Village Council. The Prosecutor General's office swore that the quality and quantity of evidence would allow to sentence the criminals as fast as possible to the strictest punishment. We have gathered all the evidence required to prevent the case from being dropped. This case is under special supervision conducted by the Prosecutor General's office. To be continued. All the subjects in this case won't avoid punishment. Zatoka Village Council. 2 years ago, its secretary was accused of organizing a contract murder. Now he's free and even performs his official duties. How did this happen? I did not make a single phone call, visual contact, or even an angry comment about Mr. Pohorili. After the staged murder, the investigators didn't document the hire settling the bill with the middlemen, so the link between the hitman and the hire was based on the hitman's confession. Based on their testimonies, we exposed and documented the actions of the middlemen and the hire. The hitmen later withdrew their testimonies, and the court hadn't reviewed the evidence in a year. Instead, it mitigated the restrictive measures for 4 out of 5 arrested and let them out of detention. Now, the police could only complain that even one of the 2 hitmen was let out. They were arrested. They had firearms they were going to use. After the restrictive measures were mitigated by the defense's appeal, the prosecutors didn't even try to renew the previous ones. They asked to continue the mitigated ones. Seems like the prosecution had lost its prior impetus. Because of the reform of the prosecution, we had massive layoffs, and the amount of work only went up. 2 years ago, the arrest of the gang from Odesa was addressed by the head of the National Police and the Prosecutor General himself. Their spokespeople had to talk about what happened next. The defense has repeatedly resorted to causing trial delays. Despite the PGO's promises, the results of the special operation with a staged murder have stalled at court. Instead of answers, we get more questions. If there wasn't enough evidence, why did they brag so much about the exposure? Why did the top officials even decide to publicly comment on the war the 2 groups waged for land? But maybe that's an isolated case of bad luck? Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, almost 700 kilometers away from Odesa, but it also has people who are ready to pay a lot of money to have a human being killed. September 2016. Yurivka Rayon is abuzz. Volodymyr Zorenko, one of the most famous local farmers, has disappeared. His murder and disappearance were a special police operation to make sure that the hire was caught. They staged it thoroughly. They caught me, I resisted, then they pulled me out here, I tried to resist, then someone injured my arms, it was bloody, I lost my shoe, they dumped me into the car and drove off. This dramatic detective story happened in summer of 2016. It has a contract murder, a special police operation, a miraculous rescue. The only thing it lacks is punishment for the person who hired the hitman. Verbuvativka is one of the 9 villages connected to Zorenko's farm, with an area of 5,000 hectares. There aren't any free houses in our village. None. So that's a village no one runs from? No, they only move here. So the whole village came to defend the farm when it was being seized by armed people. At first they let all the workers out, then they let the thugs in. There they go, with arms, to all the farm's facilities. We asked them who they were, they didn't answer, they were rude. The organizer of the attack didn't hide. It was a businessman from a nearby rayon, Petro Henik. The farmer paid him off a loan of $1,140,000. During the attack, he openly told the villagers he was taking his own back because the real debt was a lot bigger, and the court constantly changed its opinion on who was right. The court decided that I can pay it off however I want, whenever I want, and whatever I want. In June 2016, Vladislav Trukhanov, a trooper of the 95th Brigade, contacted the police. He said that Hennik offered him $30,000 to kill Zorenko. He openly stated that he needed the farm taken out. I told him that I don't and won't do this kind of thing. He answered that even if I won't, there are still others. Trukhanov seemingly accepted the offer, and the police began the operation. Someone I know said to be fucking careful with the fucking ATO soldier. An SBU officer I know told me this. During numerous documented meetings with the hitmen, the hirer showed him the places where his opponent lived and worked. His circle of friends and relatives, his everyday routes, work schedule, his transport. He demanded to conduct the killing in a specially qualified way, with the use of firearms and explosives. When I do it, I'll call you and tell you that we need to buy some water. I'll tell it on the phone. You'll say, I can buy it. It means it's fine. You can come back. Do you need a photo? Well, if he's already... yeah, do it. The murder took place late in the evening. The scenario had the farmer returning from fieldwork. They were to meet me right here. Everyone thought he disappeared. The villagers searched for his body for a whole week. The hirer was detained after the staging. The news reported about a solved murder, but this was only the beginning. 2 months after the arrest, the court let the hirer out of the detention center and put him under house arrest, then under a curfew, and finally let him free under an obligation to come to court when a judge or a detective tells him to. The judge refers to a number of facts in his decision: that the suspect is in poor health, not mentioning the diagnosis, lack of evidence, and the delay of the trial by the prosecution. Insufficient evidence, there was very, very little of it, scarce. Do you need a photo? Yeah, do it. The one the court called the hirer now has no restrictions on travel across the country. He came to our meeting with a team of lawyers. He tried to convince us that he was a victim of conspiracy between his debtor and the police. To avoid paying off his debts, Zorenko created this group of people. First of all, Trukhanov, that so-called hitman. You'll say, I can buy it. It means it's fine. You can come back. The hirer even told the hitman that he must return the $6,000 he paid in advance for the murder, with interest. He says it wasn't paid for the murder, but was just a loan. I still have the loan certificate, thank God, because when they took me, so to say, they confiscated all the documents they could. Thank God the certificate was in a secure place. This is direct pressure on a witness, because I'm going to testify against Hennik at court. A big case with a loud revelation transformed into a muddy, drawn-out trial. As was the case in Odesa, the hirer refused to talk to the hitmen after the staged murder. Money wasn't exchanged after the murder happened. This wasn't just common with both Odesa and Dnipropetrovsk operations. This also happened in the most high-profile staged murder in Kiev, of the journalist Arkady Babchenko. The middleman Boris Herman, exposed by the detectives and arrested, and the hirer who wasn't arrested, also didn't meet the hitman after he killed the target. Lawyer Yehor Chudovsky said that in the criminal world, it's unusual to have checkout meetings. We see that in fiction movies, where a staged murder is needed to have the hitman receive money for the committed crime. If we're not talking about household hires, like a wife ordering her husband's murder through her neighbor lover. Yehor Chudovsky is sure that it's usually enough to document an intent and preparation to prove a planned murder. There's an article on murder attempt for that. In 99% of cases, it's enough to successfully prove a murder without staging one. But if you need attention, you need the media, you want the entire world to know. But here, they don't think for some reason that if they make such a high-profile case, they won't have anything to prove it with. Staging a murder is a way to achieve great public interest, which the politicians use for their own image. Then the years-long trials begin. The cases under the direct supervision of top law enforcement officials will bear them, and few will remember their loud statements in a few years. Billion, then another, prime minister, and then the president. That's the national road repair campaign, as well as the ostentatious presentation of every repaired kilometer. Substantially more money is being spent on this today than in previous years, and that's really cool. But behind the scenes of the enthusiastic news reports remain those who get the money. Under which conditions, and what are the results? Lesya Ivanova drove on the new, fresh roads of the prime minister's native Vinnytsia Oblast. However, that's Groisman who drives on the new roads, while Lesya drove where they should have been, but something went wrong. Spring, summer, the hot season for road repairs. Fresh asphalt is steaming on the roads. Prime Minister's cars steamroll it. We see a part of the road which is one of the priority projects I started last year. At the end of May, Volodymyr Groisman toured the country. He took some journalists with him, while others waited along the route. We'll finish the road from Khmelnytsky to Vinnytsia this year. Groisman makes a show of checking road quality in every oblast. That's the lower layer of regenerate. That's how it looks on the 28th day, and it's already in such a good state on the 10th, and tells the voters about the ambitious plans of Groisman's government. There are two types of roads in Ukraine, the first being those made by the Groisman government, and the second being those that will be made by the Groisman government. This year, we will allocate an unprecedented $1.8 billion for road construction, and that amount will increase. And they do increase. In Vinnytsia Oblast, where Groisman was born, raised, and served as a mayor for 8 years, they will spend as much on roads this year as they had throughout the past 4 years, more than $57 million. In some oblasts, the work is going very well, while there are some problems in others. While Groisman looks like a PM looking at new asphalt, we take a look where the problems are. And that's the PM's oblast. This year, the contract for Vinnytsia roads went for the first time to an Odesa company, Rostorstroi. It took part in 8 tenders, mostly competing only with the local Avtodor. Konstantin Demishkan represents Rostorstroi in Vinnytsia. Before joining the Odesa company, he was the head of that exact Avtodor. In the end, they shared the contracts like brothers. That's how Rostorstroi gets contracts for a total of $11.5 million. For a while, the Odesa company bound to repair Vinnytsia's roads had been said to belong to the mayor of Odesa, Trukhanov. Of course, it's not formally registered to him, but until recently, its co-owner was Yuri Schumacher, an official business partner of Odesa's mayor. I'd like to avoid any suspicions. It's not a matter of preference. The Anti-Corruption Bureau looked into 3 stories connected to the mayor of Odesa, the first being about the loss of the city's control over its airport, which was privatized in an opaque way. The second is about the purchase of the Cryon factory building by the city council for an allegedly inflated price. And the third is inflated cost of road repairs. Here, Rostorshtroy was also involved. Trukhanov is already a suspect in one of the cases, but he still heads the Odesa City Council and embroiders towels together with the president's wife in his free time, while the Trukhanov-linked Rostorshtroy implements state contracts in Vinnytsia in a rather peculiar way. The most important is to lay the asphalt continuously, so that one steamroller would follow the other. The fewer joints there will be, the smoother the road. To make the road smooth, a rule was introduced. The contractor has to have an asphalt factory no more than 150 kilometers away from the site of repairs. One car gets unloaded onto the paver, then it stops and waits for another one. That comes in 1 to 2 hours, which automatically leads to a joint forming in the asphalt. In their tender documents, the Odesa firm included an asphalt factory in Strizhavka village near Vinnytsia. They brought a lease agreement, an acceptance certificate, and a production certificate. However, the Rostorshtroy's factory in Strizhavka seems to be a top-secret facility, since the factory gives the impression of having sci-fi-grade camouflage, because no one here in Strizhavka has even seen the factory, but it's there, on paper. On paper, it stands in Strizhavka village, near a quarry on its outskirts. Around 5 asphalt factories have stood here for years, but even the village head has never heard about Rostorshtroy. We have neither this firm nor the factory here. We have neither the Eskador nor the Rostorshtroy here in Strizhavka, and nobody has contacted us. I think if they had the waste permits, work permits, factory commission documents, the village council would have had them. If there's no factory, there's no way to lay the asphalt as quickly as the customer wanted to. The first to notice the phantom factory were the local activists. Then the police also failed to find it. The road service got a request with suggestions on new procurement procedures. So the national police started to investigate forgery of tender documents. If you look at the map, it's a bit to the right of the quarry. A bit to the right of the quarry? Down and to the right, yes. So if I look at the map, it's behind the Advantage gas station. Take a turn, go past the quarry. Yes, that's right. That's the head of Rostorshtroy trying to explain where their factory stood 6 months ago. The place he talks about only has 2 heaps of crushed stone, while the company insists that the factory was there, just for a short time. When the tender was held and when the documents were signed, the factory was at this address. So as of May, the factory already wasn't there. That's true. In April, we conducted additional geological surveys and decided to relocate the factory. So I can't say that we have provided some kind of false information. However, they couldn't provide any proof that the factory was ever there. Maybe some photos? Nope, we didn't take any. Do you have any proof that it stood there in February? I don't even know. No, I can't give you any proof of that. Aside from a criminal case on forgery, the road repair contracts with the Odesa construction company are still in place. A court decision would allow us to terminate the contracts. In this case, we cannot do this on our own. And the company is in no hurry to make repairs. Old asphalt still covers the roads, and the PM doesn't inspect anything here. The paradox lies in the fact that the company has another factory in the region, which they could have included in the tender documents. But maybe when you bite off a chunk of state contracts for this much money and share them with past employees of your current boss, it doesn't really matter what you write in those documents. One criminal case more, one less. But let's do them justice. They actually started building the factory that existed only on paper, but in another place. And that makes it a problem. The situation has changed. The factory they've almost built doesn't have a single document. Valentina and Nadia, residents of Komarov village, showed us their garden. They joke that they recently got a new neighbor. That house is 425 meters away, and 350 meters to me. Our houses are at the same level. The active phase of the factory's construction began in April, the locals said. That was after the Rostorshstroy signed the contracts with the state. It's being built several hundred meters away from houses, instead of at least 1 kilometer, according to the norms. Budget replenishment, workplaces, we supported this. We're not against the factory. If they just moved it further, as it should be. 600 to 700 meters further, and we'll be okay with it. The head of Rostorshstroy insists that the factory is new and eco-friendly, and it will have less restrictions someday. I'm sure they won't refuse. I know that similar factories got such permissions. The company doesn't see any problem in first building a factory and then getting the documents for it. And that's not only about sanitary norms, but other environmental regulations as well. We asked them where were their construction permits, if they did an environmental study, as the law requires. They said it's all underway. They should have studied the effect on the environment and then held a public hearing. They neither held a public hearing nor did an environmental study, nor filed a report to the Ministry of Ecology. This is criminally liable. Out of all of the necessary documents of a finished factory, the Ministry of Ecology's website has only the declaration of intent to build it. Still, it appeared there a month after we saw an almost finished facility in Komarov. The process of approving the documents is underway. At what stage is it? I can't tell you. Maybe on the last one. Do you already have an environmental study? I don't know. It will be soon, I think. To apply for a tender with a factory they cannot prove exists, to build a factory in another place without the documents required to launch it. We can only hope that the Odesa firm takes road repairs more seriously than they do the tenders and environmental legislation. To sum up, if you're steamrolling asphalt, do just that. Don't steamroll people. That's all for today. You can watch any of our episodes and even more on our YouTube channel. We love talking to you on social media. Subscribe, comment, ask us questions. If you have an interesting and important topic, write us an email. It's more secure. See you on air in a week. This was done as Bihus with the program Our Money. Goodbye.
До зустрічі.